God, guys, it's a lot of work, you know. Hello there, friends. Welcome back aboard the good ship Boomerang, here on a hot as balls day. And I was trying to think of something that would be useful for me to add to the internet, and I'm sure there's like already hundreds of these already, but one thing I noticed when recently I had some brand new fresh meat sailors on board was how important the language of sailing is. Boats, sailboats in particular, but boats in general, all have a unique nomenclature that goes for everything. And that is, by design. It's important that when the captain says to the mate, attach that sheet to the clew of the Genoa, that they perfectly understand each other. You can't be saying, hey, take this rope and tie a knot to the back corner of that sail up there. It's inefficient and leads to mistakes. So using the right names for things is important. But sailing is a pretty intimidating endeavor for the uninitiated. At least that's been my experience. And I think part of it is the language. I mean, learning any language is tough. Take it from someone who tried to learn French. But as they say, if you want to understand the soul of a people, first you must learn their language. So that applies to sailors. So I'm gonna call this video something clickbaity, like 10 things you need to know, or 10 words beginner sailors need not to look stupid, whatever. But truth be told, there's gonna be a lot more than 10 words I'm gonna use here. And that's just because everything's got a special name. But I'm gonna try and do this in some kind of reasonable order. And hopefully you get something out of this. If you do, I would be delighted if you would hit that subscribe button. I recently hit the milestone I've been waiting for years, which is 1,000 beautiful subscribers. They're beautiful subscribers. Thank you all. I mean, it's quite humbling that anybody at all wants to watch someone who is not smart talk about something that he knows very little about. But here we are. That's the very essence of the internet, isn't it? So anyway, look, I'm delighted. If you are a subscriber, God bless you. If you're considering being a subscriber, just hit that button and be done with it. Okay, on with the show. So let's start with the basics. And I have to apologize, my autopilot's being a whiny little so-and-so today. But I'm by myself, so we're gonna have to put up with it. First things first, let's talk sails. This sail right here is what's called a mainsail. And it's called the mainsail because it's the mainsail comes off of the back of the mast and is affixed to the boom. And on a lot of boats, it's the sail that's going to drive the boat, but not on this boat. And that's because on this boat, the jib, which is the forward sail, and let's go up and have a look. The jib is actually on this boat called a Genoa. And why is it called a Genoa? Is because it overlaps the mast. So here's the mast, and you can see that this head sail, this jib, is going past the mast. So that means it's a Genoa. And this one goes back all the way to there. Not quite maximum size. Maximum would be a 155, and that means that it's 155%. It goes 55% past the mast. This is maybe a 145, maybe a 150, hard to tell. But that's the head sail. What I do not have presently, but look forward to acquiring at some point, is a spinnaker. That would be the third sort of sail that you would carry on a boat like this, which is called a sloop. A sloop, or Bermuda rigged sloop, is just a boat that has one mast, one sail coming off the mast, and one sail going forward. This one happens to be what's called masthead rigged, and that means the sail goes all the way to the top of the mast. And what that actually means is that on this boat, this jib, or my Genoa, is really what drives the boat. It's the engine of the boat, and that's just because it's the biggest sail. On a fractional rig, you see those sticks sticking out of the side of the mast are called spreaders, and the top spreader head sail, or Genoa, just went to there. If the head sail just went to there, that would be called a fractional rig. Okay, so that's the basics of the sails. The spinnaker would be those big colorful sails that you see flying off the front of the boat, and those are primarily used for downwind or reaching. Like I said, I don't have one of those yet. Can't wait to get one because they're a lot of fun to fly. But all things in due course. Just a question of money, right? So those are the sails. Every sail has 3 sides because they're triangles. This leading edge of the sail going all the way up is what's called the luff. That bottom part there is called the foot, and that back end is called the leech. Okay? Luff, foot, leech. This part here of the sail that is connected to the furling at the bottom, that is called the tack. The back of the sail, where the line is attached, that's called a clew. And that is true whether we're talking about the Genoa or the mainsail. Tack, foot, clew, leech, luff, and at the very top it's called the head of the sail. So I'm probably already at 10 words, and we've only talked about the sails. That's sailing. There's a lot to learn. So I'm going to take a break, reset up this autopilot, maybe see if I can get a little bit more speed out of it, because we're not going very fast at all here. And we'll start talking about lines. Before I do though, you'll notice that I call them lines and not ropes. If you want to look like a newbie on a sailboat, call these ropes. But if you call them a line, oh gosh, you must know what you're talking about. You've done this before. You're experienced. I trust you. Okay, so lines. You're gonna get on a boat and you're gonna see this spaghetti monster of lines and you're gonna be intimidated. But there's really only a few that, as a beginner, you need to worry yourself about. I'll start first with the halyard. So a halyard is an Old English word, or it's a deviation of an Old English word, which I believe started off meaning haul yard, because the big square rigged ships, they had these yards, they were called, that lifted the square rigged sails. And so the lines that were attached to that they used to pull up the sail, they were hauling the yard up the mast, so they were called halyards. And over the course of 500 years of language, it's just morphed into halyard. So halyard is your line that lifts the sail. This right here is my main halyard. So this line I use most of all because it puts that mainsail up and down. You pull it on this winch using a winch handle to raise it up. And on this side, this green and yellow line is my Genoa halyard. So I have two halyards there for the two main sails. This blue and yellow line is my spinnaker halyard. So when I do eventually get a spinnaker, I will use this line to raise and lower that sail. So 3 halyards on this boat. Actually, there's 5 halyards on this boat because this here is a spare halyard. Oh no, sorry, not that one. This one is a spare halyard, and this one is a spare halyard. And those come out of the front of the mast, and they are there in case tomfoolery happens. Let's say there's a jam, maybe you sky a halyard, which means that it gets let go of the sail and it goes up to the top of the mast and you can't retrieve it without going up to the top of the mast yourself. Well, I've got these spare halyards there ready to put on the top of the sail and rehoist in that sort of an emergency. Sometimes you'll have a setup where you'll have 2 head sails flying, and so you need that second halyard for that purpose. But for me on this boat, they're just a safety net. So those are the halyards. Sheets are the other word you need to know. This is a sheet. This is a sheet. That is a sheet. So what does that mean, sheet? Again, it's an Old English saying, and I might get this wrong. So if you're a salty old dog and you know what you're talking about, please comment below and correct me, not only on this point, but on any of these points that you think that I'm steering the good rookie YouTube sailors astray. Put them on the straight and narrow, please and thank you. So the sheet are called that, having something to do with the back of the corner of the sail in Old English being called the chute, I believe. And on the square rig sails, there would be 2 chutes because the 2 bottom corners. And the captain would call out different commands to control the chute, to let it in or to let it out. And the lines that were attached to those corners eventually just took on the same name. And somewhere along the line, it went from chute to sheet, and that stuck. So we're not talking about bed sheets, we're talking about control lines. So this sheet comes around this winch, around that block, and to the clew of that sail. That's the corner of that sail. So I control it and I can let it out. If I do that, just to do it a little bit to show you, that lets that sail out a little bit. So those are your control lines. Same thing here on the mainsail. Now it's not, you'll notice that it's not attached to directly to the corner of the sail. It's attached to the boom, but it's attached to the boom relatively close to where the back or the clew of the mainsail is. Now that is because we can control this through this, what's called an outhaul. We can bring this in or let it out depending on what we want to do with it. But this sheet here effectively does the same thing in that it controls the angle of that back sail. So if I were to let the sheet go like this and let that out, you can see the sail starts to fall away from the wind. Now it's getting unhappy because that is not good trim at the moment. So we'll bring it back in. And now our telltales are flying happy. The sail's in good shape. Sheet, sheet. The last set of lines we'll talk about are these here. And this is for something called the Traveler. The Traveler is another control system for the angle of your mainsail. And if I let this out that car, that traveler, will go down, and we will slow down because that's not good trim. So I want that traveler up like this. And what I'm controlling there is where the boom is relative to the center line of the boat. Gosh, autopilot, you're so loud. Why are you so loud? So that's a lot already, isn't it? Seems like a lot. And we've only just begun. Okay, so all those lines that we were talking about are what's referred to as your running rigging. And that's because it's part of the rig, but it all moves and it adjusts, and you're constantly moving it around, so that's called running rigging. But every sailboat, regardless of type, will have something called standing rigging as well. Your standing rigging is the typically metal wires or rods, as they are on this boat. Sometimes they're Kevlar, sometimes it's Dyneema. It all depends on the boat. But 90% of them are stainless steel wire. Maybe 5% of them are stainless rod, like on this boat, and then 5% are something else. I just made those numbers up. Who knows what it actually is? The point is that the standing rigging is what holds your mast up. So on this boat we have 2 wires, actually 3 sets of wires that come down to these turnbuckles. Let's have a look. Okay, so these wires that come down to these turnbuckles and go all the way up the side of the mast. When they're at the side of the mast like that, they're called shrouds. There's probably an old English term for that, but I haven't looked that up yet, so forgive me. I'll have to do that before I post this video. Shrouds, and then you have 1 wire inside that foil, that's the leading edge, the luff edge of the Genoa, and then 1 at the back that goes all the way to the back of the boat. And those are called stays. Forestay, backstay. Okay, so front and back, the wires are called stays. Side to side, they're called shrouds. And again, I'll try to figure out why that is, and I'll put some text over my talking stupid face so that you have that information. You do adjust these, okay? So that's why there's turnbuckles there. The turnbuckles allow you to tension or detension the shrouds. There's a specific amount of tension that you want to have on these, because if you think about the amount of force that's happening right now with those 2 sails full of wind, it's wanting to knock that mast over. So these metal rods right here are what's preventing that from happening, okay? Likewise, the stays on the front and back, they can be adjusted. Now, you'll almost never adjust, you can adjust the forestay, but you'll almost never do that. But on this boat, I have what's called an adjustable backstay, which allows me when I'm racing to, or even just wanting to point upwind a little bit better. In fact, we're going upwind right now. I should probably go and do that. But it allows you to tension that backstay and pull the top of the mast back and put a little bit more friendly of an upwind sail shape on your mainsail. Does that, and it also tightens because that forestay goes to the top of the mast and the backstay goes to the top of the mast. When you tension that backstay, it's pulling the back of that mast or the top of the mast back, and therefore it's tightening this stay, and therefore taking the sag out of that and giving you a nice firm leading edge of a sail. And that just means fast. So let's put some tension on that backstay. I'll show you how that's done. All right, so here we are at the stern of the boat, and this here is my backstay adjuster. This is a hydraulic unit. It's got oil in it, and when I pump it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 a bunch of times, that's going to put tension. It's going to draw that backstay back, put some bend in the mast, tighten up the forestay, and we should therefore be able to sail upwind a little quicker. And that's not just theory. I prove that to myself every Wednesday night when we race this boat. That's part of our part of the process of when we round the mark to go upwind. I slam on a bunch of backstay. We pull a Cunningham, which is something that you do not need to know about if you're a beginner, and we go upwind nicely. We're learning things. We're learning things together. I'm so pleased. So that's a lot we've covered in a pretty short amount of time. I don't expect you to have that all memorized, but hopefully you get something out of that. Before we go, there's just one extra bonus thing I want to talk about, and that's instrumentation. I'm just going to show you through the instruments that I'm paying attention to, and maybe you get something out of that too. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about instrumentation. From left to right, this is the autopilot control. This is my depth sounder. You can see that we're at 122 feet of depth, which is good. I'm not going to hit anything. The boat is just moseying along 4.7, so that's in knots. Knots. What is a knot? Okay, I should stop here. And again, I might get this wrong. So again, salty dogs, please correct me. I believe the term knot comes from, in the olden days, they would measure the speed of the boat by dropping a line with some kind of a weight or a bucket or I don't know what off the back of the boat, and that length of line would have a knot tied in it every so often. I'm not sure how long. And as the line would go and the knots would disappear off the deck of the boat into the water, they'd count them over a given period of time. And however many knots left the deck of the boat on that line in that given period of time, they would decide that's how fast they were going. So that's why we measure boat speed in knots, even though obviously that was not a very standardized way of doing things 500 years ago, as I'm sure every boat had a different length of line or God knows what. But we've standardized the unit, and that's why we call them knots, I think. Okay, so back to the story. 4.7, that's how fast we're going. And this here is my wind instrument. Up at the top, you can't see it right now, but on the front of the mast there is a wind instrument with some cups that's spinning, and it's telling me the speed. This is the true speed. So the true wind speed is 9.5 knots, and it's hitting the boat at the angle we're sailing at roughly 60 degrees. So if we're pointed straight like this, it means that the wind is hitting us probably on this angle. When I press this button here, we go from true wind to apparent wind. And you saw the needle jump there. So we're at 60 degrees true wind, but apparent wind, we're at more like 40 degrees. And why that's happening is that we're going through the water at, oh, now 5 knots. How about that? We're going through the water at 5 knots. We're generating wind. So as you generate your own wind, the calculation changes, because now you have the true wind plus the wind that you're making, and that's what's called apparent wind. And as you sail the boat, you typically want to keep it on apparent wind, because that is what the boat is experiencing So when you're adjusting your sails and adjusting your point of sail, you're wanting to keep it on the apparent wind because, well, that's what the boat is actually experiencing. Make sense? I hope so. So basically that's sailing, and any idiot can do it. Proof positive right here. It's the best, isn't it? So I really encourage, if you're watching this and you're thinking, I'm interested in getting into sailing, just do it. Go find a local club and try and get on a boat for race night. Join as a social member, join as a dinghy member. Do whatever you can to get yourself into the scene. And then, you know what? Sailboats are cheap. Like, well, they can be insanely expensive, of course. But particularly here on the Great Lakes, there is a plethora of inexpensive sailboats. A lot of them criminally underused, that are just dying for someone like yourself to pluck them out of obscurity and give them life again. Like, look at this boat, for example. This boat sat on the hard for 3 years, abandoned, and the marina that sold it to me was contemplating scrapping it for the value of the lead keel. There's 4,000 pounds of lead that they thought they might be able to sell to a scrapper for a decent penny. But isn't it better that I bought it instead, and now it's doing its intended purpose of bringing pleasure? I think so. So that's the video. Thanks for watching, as always. Again, please consider hitting that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you anything, and if you don't want to watch my videos, you don't have to watch them. But the subscriptions help so much in terms of telling the algorithm, which is our evil AI master, what is good and what is not good. So yeah, hopefully the AI overlords will consider this good. Thanks to you. Cheers, guys. See you on the lake.